Welcome back to another edition of the Here We Go podcast. And we are on day 2 of Rodgers Watch. I feel like we are in the middle of the scene of Anchorman where Paul Rudd's standing outside yelling at the panda to actually do something back there. Um, it, I, I Everybody's in a complete meltdown and freak out over this whole thing. And if you've not followed Aaron Rodgers' career, this is pretty par for the course. And he's going to continue to hold out and continue to wait on his decision. And I think there's 2 questions here. Number 1, how long should the Steelers wait for him? Number 2, should they even be willing to wait for them? So I put a poll out on X just to kind of gauge the feel of some people here on how they felt about this whole Aaron Rodgers saga. And the poll was the question was very simple: is Mason Rudolph significantly worse than Aaron Rodgers? 60% said yes, 40% said no at 112 votes so far. That's kind of mind-boggling that the fan base feels that strongly that, you're talking about a guy that was essentially a cast-off here in Pittsburgh and Mason Rudolph, and a guy who is a sure first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. It kind of shows it where the fan base thinks he is in his career and kind of how much of a toss-up this really is for the fan base as far as, do they want, a guy like Aaron Rodgers? Do they want to bring back a Russell Wilson? Do they want to just go younger? I think we're kind of all over the place here, Steeler Nation. So it's not really a surprise. We're usually pretty all over the place on some of these opinions. But I really got to say, it's really not surprising to it, in my opinion, that this thing isn't resolved yet. One of the things that I do think puts a timetable on this whole situation is Cooper Kupp becomes a free agent. If the team sees Aaron Rodgers as a viable candidate to take them into not only winning a playoff game, but trying to make a run in the playoffs, Cooper Kupp is a guy that should absolutely be on their radar. He would be an obvious upgrade over Calvin Austin. He would be an obvious upgrade over Roman Wilson. So if you're really selling in, then I think that would be an interesting scenario to just, go all in, get Cooper Kupp and Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if that's going to be a winning formula personally, but I could see where the organization would have that mindset. And I was going to bring this up, but this is hilarious. So there's no funnier scenario in this offseason right now than Kenny Pickett getting traded to Cleveland and Russell Wilson going to visit Cleveland to possibly sign there. If that actually happens, that is going to probably be one of the funniest things of this entire offseason. A guy who literally was begging basically to get traded away from Pittsburgh because he didn't want the competition. And then essentially ends up with the same guy in the same quarterback room and potentially costing him another starting position. So I think it's hilarious. I'm not going to lie. It's such a Cleveland thing to do. Like, it is such a Cleveland thing to do. Cleveland's in just a world of hurt right now. The Deshaun Watson contract, I don't understand why they extended it out. I don't understand why they're pushing the cap. They should have just taken their lumps right away and been done with it. Personally, I think that was a mistake. But we're not getting a whole lot of, stuff going on in free agency right now. So, of course, in Steelers Twitter, the sky is falling. But they do make a move today. They get some slot cornerback depth. It's probably a guy who's going to compete to start with Beanie Bishop. I don't know if he's going to be a serious competitor to start. It seems like they're okay with Beanie Bishop moving forward because I didn't think he was a true competition guy. He seems like more of a depth piece at this point than anything. He's a 5'10", 175-pound corner. He's not going to play on the outside. So it's going to be more of a depth move. So there's really not much to report today, right? It's basically the Aaron Rodgers watch. Tone Diggs keeps putting stuff out there that's like kind of cryptic, and it makes you wonder like if he actually knows something is coming because he seems to be a guy who 2 days in a row now has really put some stuff out there. Got some news. Don't know how the guy is with cousins. Neighbors with Kyle Juice. Oh, see, that'd be interesting because I think Juice would be an interesting guy if we it depends on how we're going to run this offense. I mean, he was a guy who kind of converted to tight end, had been a fullback his entire career. I think he's a kind of like Swiss Army knife type piece. Depending on the price tag, which at his age, I can't imagine it would be very high. But he'd be intriguing to me because he would really play the role that somewhat Connor Hayward played last year with being the fullback. But he would be a great lead blocker in that scenario. Yeah, I agree. He can block and he can catch, and he was very useful for the 49ers. Doesn't have to do a ton. It's not going to be a guy who expects the ball a lot. But if Arthur Smith's going to run his 4 tight end sets, I think he'd be a really nice addition. And you would essentially be really interesting to see what they would do in that scenario because Darnold Parham is more of a receiving tight end. He's a slender build guy. So he's more of a receiving threat than some of the others in the room, not named Pat Freiermuth. But at the same time, I don't know if he's a good special teams player or not. I can't say I have any idea about that part. But Connor Hayward is a very good special teams player. He did not get very involved in the offense after Arthur Smith got here. So Juszczyk would probably be a guy who could replace Connor Hayward in a lot of ways. So he might be the odd man out. I don't know. That'd be kind of an interesting scenario. But I've always kind of liked Juszczyk. He's just such an interesting piece, and he's kind of that Swiss Army knife type guy on offense that you can move around anywhere. Even on third down situations, he's good at picking up blitzes too. So he'd be a really interesting piece. Just a matter of what he would do. If it's 2 years, $10 million for essentially a third or fourth string tight end / running back, that might be a little rich for my blood. I don't think I would go that high. I don't know. I don't know what his market's going to be like either. But he's just kind of an interesting piece. So I think I would do that. But I think the main guys that we're looking at right now would be Aaron Rodgers. So obviously, seeing what's going to happen with that. Seems like there's a lot of people putting out there that whole contract, 2 years, $90 million was definitely not reality. And it does sound like he's going to be much closer into that $30 million a year range. Just a matter of, he may retire. There's still obviously an option where he could retire. I could see a scenario where he wants to go to the Vikings. Their roster is quite honestly a little better than ours, but I think now that we've got the DK trade in there, you still have Pickens. If they were willing to go get a guy like Cooper Kupp for him, that'd be very enticing. It'd be very enticing. It's just a matter of how much does he trust the young offensive line. So I don't think we're out of the sweepstakes by any means. I think we're kind of right in the thick of things. I still think he could probably end up being the most likely candidate of being the quarterback. Not that I love having a 41-year-old, soon to be 42-year-old on the roster for next year, but it is what it is. We don't have a lot of Pickens. And the whole point of the poll that I put out earlier isn't necessarily to make any type of argument about Mason Rudolph coming back. Never liked Mason Rudolph as a quarterback. He's a nice enough guy. I thought he was a great teammate. Can't really see anything bad about him in that aspect, but I just didn't think he was very good. So Sheffy said the Vikings have McCarthy as their guy and don't want AR. Well, that's very possible. That's very possible. And there's nobody more plugged in than Adam Schefter. So that could either be the Vikings camp trying to put something out there to get Aaron Rodgers camp to drive the number down, or they could be fully bought into a guy they picked in the top 10. I can see that working both ways. So if Schefter's reporting it, it's probably pretty accurate. But, it's just going to be a matter of what Aaron Rodgers wants to play for this year, if he wants to play. I think that's what it comes down to. But if we're willing to go in on, a complete roster for him to try to make a run and show that he's not going to go out the guy that he was last year as a New York Jet, as a 5-win quarterback, that'd be a tough pill to swallow for a guy who's as competitive as he is and a guy who has the ceiling and expectations that he sets for himself every single year. It'd be kind of a tough pill to swallow. So That's kind of my argument against why he would even want to go to the Giants. Again, why would you want to go to an organization that's not very good, that has a ton of holes in there? I didn't know if there was any truth to this. I saw this report. I don't know. I would love to know if that was like a fact that actually happened or not. But I did see the report there that somebody threw out that he was ordering Pirates merch. Seems like it'd be silly for him to kind of tip his hand like that if that was true. But who knows? It's the off season. I mean, Aaron's kind of an oddball guy anyway. His mind works a little different than the rest of us. So I could see him probably doing just about anything at this point. It wouldn't surprise me too much. But yeah, I think he's just a guy that I don't know how much of a clear upgrade he's going to be over anybody that's out there right now. If he's the same guy as last year, then I don't know that he's. I saw that too. Smitty put that out there. He's listening to Renegade on the beach in his towel, bathrobe, whatever that thing was. That was pretty funny. But yeah, but I know everybody's still getting kind of worked up because we're not making more moves. There's still some quality guys that are out there on the market right now that you could go after. And I still think there's some guys you could upgrade on. I mean, an interesting name to me that's still out there that I think would wonder if the team would take a look at. I'm not sure that they will, but Cam Robinson, a guy who probably hasn't lived up to his draft spot. He's 29 years old, but it could be tackle insurance. Compete to start with Broderick Jones. So he would be a guy that I still think is kind of interesting that his name is out there right now. I have no idea how you say his name. Charles Omeniwu, defensive end from the Kansas City Chiefs, 27 and a half years old. So he's not very old at this point in his career. Be an interesting guy to go after. I don't think everybody keeps talking about corner. Like, I don't see that we're going to make a move at corner at this point. Darius Slay actually signed. I was actually a little concerned that maybe that his signing was going to hinge on whether or not Aaron Rodgers was going to come here so he could play for a winner again, or at least try to play for a winner again. That clearly wasn't the case. Signs a 1-year, $10 million contract. I wasn't ever quite sure what the number was going to come in. And I think that's actually very, very fair. 1 year for a guy who's still playing at a really, really high level. I think he comes in as the cornerback one. So I'm sure there's some Joey Porter Jr. Big fans that would watch this. I do like Joey. I think that I support Joey a little more than some others in the fan base do. They give him a hard time because of the penalties and this and that. But I think Joey's still got a potential to be a lockdown cornerback one in this league. But if Darius Slay comes here, he's the one. And I don't think it's that close right now. But I think Joey could help, grow into that, seeing a guy like Darius Slay and the way he handles his business. And another thing that I think is going to be really good about this signing is, I know it's only a 1-year thing. I know this isn't long-term. I personally wanted this team to look for more long-term options. But if you're going to sign a guy like Darius Slay, he's a very good press man cover corner. Joey Porter wants to be a press man cover corner. I think you get to change your defense in the way that you play. Dante Jackson was not very good at man-to-man. He was not good in press. So I think this kind of changes the dynamic on the back end of the defense. And it's going to give Minkah Fitzpatrick a chance to kind of play more of that deep safety where he gets to ball hawk a little bit. They had him playing a little too deep last year, in my opinion. But I think this time, this gives him an opportunity where he knows his guys are locked up man-to-man. He can kind of read the quarterback and where they're wanting to go with the ball, and he can just go attack the ball. So I think this actually helps make Fitzpatrick out to some degree as well. So I really like the move. I thought it was a great signing. I think the value is a good value for what Darius Slay is. Thought it's fair for both parties. $10 million for a guy who's 34 years old, still playing at a high level. I don't think anybody lost in that one. So that's kind of the contracts that you're looking for in the offseason, to be perfectly honest with you. So, again, I'm not sure that there's a ton to talk about with other guys that are out there. Eccles, like, he's a guy who didn't log like a ton of snaps, but he's a guy who he graded really poorly if you follow PFF. I looked him up earlier today. He didn't grade very well, but he's another guy who's going to come in to compete for that slot cornerback job. And it's going to give Beanie Bishop a run for his money. And it should be kind of interesting to see where they go with that. I think Beanie Bishop could be the guy who ends up winning out in camp. Eccles being more of a cover guy than a pure like downhill tackler makes me wonder if they're looking at this like a split time situation where maybe Eccles comes in as the more of a coverage guy, and then you have Beanie Bishop as the guy who's going to come in and play the early downs. But I thought Beanie was getting better as the year went on. I really think they screwed up by putting Sutton in as much as they did. I thought Sutton should not have been on the field, especially late in the year. We could see just he was getting cooked every game. I thought Beanie Bishop should have been playing a lot more. He got like 3 or 5 snaps the last game he played in, and he gets an interception. And I think it was the Kansas City game. That was tough. I mean, that was tough to watch him get benched like that. I didn't agree with that move whatsoever. So the other thing about the Darius Slay move, a lot of people were like freaking out because now we need to draft a corner in this draft. I disagree. I don't think we have to draft a corner now. I think this signals to me that the team is fully bought into Corey Trice, and they just want to see if he can stay healthy for a full year. I think they believe in Corey. I think they like Corey, and they want him to be the guy across from Joey Porter Jr. They obviously like his build, his frame, and the intangibles that he brings to the table. The limited snaps we did get to see him this past year, I thought he played really, really well. I know a ton of people got on him for the Cincinnati game. Look, I'm sorry. I'm going to say this. I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. When you're going up against Jamar Chase and a team kind of leaves you on an island for a large portion of the game, and you hold that guy down under 100 yards, you had a fine game. He had 1 touchdown. I get it. Had 91 or whatever yards. I get it. But that guy won the Triple Crown as a receiver. Held him under 100 yards. That's a good game. So I thought he played well. He kept battling. He didn't get down on himself. Even when he was getting beat, a lot of times when he did get beat, it was when we were playing that damn, off coverage where we're 5 and 10 yards deep. I hate that coverage. That's a whole different story. But I just really thought that, he's shown some things that made the organization feel good about him. They just want to see if he stays healthy. And I think that's what it's going to boil down to now. And the Darius Slay move kind of gives him 1 year of insurance to kind of see, like, can Corey stay healthy? Can he be here, game in and game out for 17 games, 18 games, 19 games, whatever they make it in the playoffs. And I think that's really probably all that boils down to. So I personally probably would have gone younger on the cornerback market. Travarius Ward would have been a guy I really liked, but that's not where they went. So it is what it is, and we move on. I still want to see them go find a guard. I still think the guard position is a position that we really need to attack. I don't know if they're going to be just waiting on that position and they really feel good about Mason McCormick, obviously a guy that they thought highly enough of to bring in for a top 30 visit last year. They started him as a rookie, and they had another option there. I mean, Spencer Anderson was in the building, and he did start one of the games. And then when Sam Muller came back, instead of starting him on the other side, they actually started Mason McCormick. So I found that interesting, and I said there's obviously some buy-in from the organization seeing what he did there. But if it were me, especially with some of the moves that we're continuing to make, I think I would continue to try to upgrade this roster any way that you can if you think there's any chance that you're going to win this year. And so that's what it's going to boil down to. So if they're going to go all in with this, and a lot of this may fringe on, again, the whole Aaron Rodgers thing, and I actually think that's why we're not making many moves, because if Aaron signs, I think that they're maybe looking at going more all in this year. If he doesn't sign, then maybe they make some different moves than what they intended to had Aaron signed. So wow. Okay. Jamar Higgins and Pickens. So they officially have no cap headed to the defensive side of the football. They're just all UDFAs. I like it. Yeah, so I really think that, because I also think this, Aaron Rodgers comes into the building. Can you run the same Arthur Smith offense that they've been running? I don't know that you can do that, because he's a guy who wants to spread it out. And if you do get Aaron Rodgers in the building, instead of having 2 tight ends on the field at all times and running like a 12 personnel, are they going to run more 11 personnel? Because he does like to spread the field and he likes to spread the ball around. So again, that's kind of where I look at, would you go after a guy like Cooper Kupp in that scenario, knowing that you're going to run 3 receivers on the field quite a bit? If you do that, I actually think there's some fallout there between Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson. One of those guys may have to go if they bring in another receiver, because somebody's got to play special teams. So 2 for 50. Is that for who are you talking to for, or who are you talking about for 2 for 50? Is that going to be 30 fully first year fully guaranteed? Oh, Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, okay. I assume that's the Aaron Rodgers deal you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah, because that would give you a pretty easy out on the second year, if you're not fully guaranteeing everything on the second year, which would make a lot of sense, because you're probably going to draft a quarterback in 2026, and you don't need a 42, soon to be 43-year-old quarterback. So yeah, it would be a fully front-loaded, fully guaranteed contract in the first year with a pretty easy out in the second year. Would make a ton of sense. But yeah, I don't know. We don't have a ton to talk about tonight, so I just wanted to give some of my thoughts on that. So I think that there's a reason why a lot of this stuff is being held up right now by Aaron Rodgers, because I think it can change the complexity of how this offense is going to run. If you have an opportunity where you have Aaron Rodgers, who's a quarterback who can spread the ball around, who does get the ball out of his hand fast, and you're probably not going to want to run as much 12 personnel with Darnell Washington on the field with Pat Freiermuth. You're probably going to want to run Pat Freiermuth, and you're probably going to want to run a Cooper Kupp or Calvin Austin, or wherever you go with the slot receiver at that point. So I think we're not seeing moves because the team's waiting to see what happens. So for everybody who's having a meltdown right now because we didn't make 5 moves today, cap is real, and you need to figure out what the cap is going to be left after the quarterback. It's the most important position on the field. They're going to take care of that first. If it's not about the money, then I don't know what they're doing. That would be probably Aaron Rodgers just being dramatic and taking his time on a decision. And he may just honestly just not want to play anymore. I think any solution to this whole dilemma is pretty viable. But I still can't see the path for the Giants. I just really don't. I think it's either going to be he's going to play in Pittsburgh this year, or he's probably going to retire. Unless the Vikings decide to change their tune and go after him. I could see him being interested, but I don't know. I feel like everything in free agency right now is going to be on hold. This feels very much like the Ayuk thing, right? They didn't make a lot of moves. They had a move early in the offseason, then they kind of pulled back. They held back. Nothing was happening. They had to find out what was going to happen with the Ayuk trade before they moved forward, and they really sat on their hands for way too long. I don't want it to be that situation, especially because this is not a 26-year-old we're talking about. This is a 41-year-old that we're talking about. So I think it's going to be a situation where they're going to have to put a clock on it. It may be a week, could be 2 weeks, but the longer they let this thing drag out, the more you miss out on other free agents. And I think there's going to be opportunities to open up more cap space. We're going to want to spend more money. So, but the direction of this organization is going to probably hinge on who the quarterback's going to be. So it's probably going to be on hold until we get an answer. And unfortunately, I'm not sure when we're going to get that answer, and nobody else seems to have a clue either. So, while I agree, Tim Diggs feels like he knows something. He's not really letting on anything more than anybody else. So we'll have to wait and see. But that's about all I got for you tonight. I will probably be back on doing this again tomorrow. Hopefully we'll have some more news. So appreciate you guys all listening. As always, like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to y'all later.